All right. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogue Special Wednesday edition, episode number 271. As you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune dialogues. All right, so that good-looking guy you see there, my dialogue partner today, somebody I've known for a very long time, and I was just telling him, I will readily admit we do not talk anywhere near as often as we should. So Harley Elmore, welcome back to the Jeet Kune Dialogues.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me on board.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, here's how it came about, right? Burt Richardson, a few weeks ago, went to see the movie Sound of Freedom, and then he posted, everybody should go watch this. I was in LA with my good friend Ron and Johnny, and we had the Sunday off because there was no classes at the Inosanto Academy. So we went to watch the movie. So I thought, I did the same thing. I was compelled to do the same thing that Burt did. And almost immediately, I get some comments. So one of the comments said, it's also a work of fiction based on a QAnon theory, right? So I asked, so are you saying then that it's completely made up? And I received the reply, like all stories, it undoubtedly has elements of truth, but yes, fiction. The real issue is that it detracts from the genuine organizations working in the real world who need support. So you're not a particularly political guy, right?
No.
And neither am I. But can we talk about this? This is the other part. Let me fill you in on this in case you didn't know this. So Neil MacLeod in the UK said, Dwight, get Harley Elmore on. He trained some of the operatives. So that's how we got here.
Okay.
Long story short.
Yeah, I got you.
Right?
Yeah. So, wow, that's a lot to start off with there. So, I will say that Operation Underground Railroad and the guys who are running that have a long history. They've been around a long time. He is a former operator, United States military Army operator. And now he does that, and he's done it for a long time. But all I would say is if you're interested in knowing the true story about their organization, they're a 501c3 just like we are, and so you can go look them up. You can go look and see. That's one of the benefits of nonprofits is that you can just go look at their books, so to speak.
Right.
And not everybody, likes how people, do things. Some people are like, well, I wish the money would go this way or that way, or I wish you would market this way or that way, or I wish you would do I wish your mission was slightly different. And the great thing about nonprofits is that you can choose which one you want to give your money to. Mm-hmm. So you just look at them, listen to them, see if you like the message that they have, and then look at what they're doing and see if that's really true. Are they really doing what they say they're going to do with the money?
Yeah.
And then if you like that, then invest. So I can't say anything bad at all about that organization or about what they do or how they do it. I'm sure they're doing what they feel like is the right path. Now, as far as training operators, that's true. I worked for SIOC Tactical Group for 20 years. For a certain stint of that, I worked full-time embedded on a team, training guys. So I have a long history of training, America's most elite operators. Many of those are now civilians that have retired and are in different various lines of work. Some of them in this kind of work. But I didn't train the operators in that particular organization. Those guys have been around longer than our nonprofit, right?
I see.
So our nonprofit is only a little over 3 years old.
Mhm.
We took our first mission right before the big pandemic, and we were actually so if I could I just tell you a little bit about the
Of course.
origin. Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course.
So basically, I was kind of coming off of working full time for SOC Tactical Group, and I was kind of looking at spending some more time at the house, with the wife, kind of thing, and looking for kind of the next mission, like what's the next purpose in life, if you will. I really enjoyed doing that with SOC Tactical Group, but the GWAT was, the Global War on Terror, really kind of wind down. That chessboard was folding up. It wasn't as much work for guys like me, um, and so I was kind of looking to shift gears. And a friend of mine spoke to a guy, uh, an expat working in a foreign country. I can't really say their names or the locations because we're still working there, and that burns bridges. So they said, "Hey, our guys over here have little to no training. They're getting rolled up on the streets, followed home, physically attacked, that sort of thing, to families. Could you come help?" And so, I talked to, the SIOC council, because I don't, I'm part of an organization that I don't just get to make arbitrary decisions, and so we talked about, what that influence would be. And we all agreed that that was a worthwhile mission and that'd be a good thing for me to take on. So with their blessing, we built a program, went over there to the Middle East, and trained operators who were going into these brothels. And he wasn't joking. Desperately poverty-stricken country, people who are on the edge of collapse as a society anyway. And anytime you have that kind of desperation, you have people who can try and take advantage of it.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
Underage prostitution, child exploitation, forced labor, or bonded labor for adults as well as children, but certainly the children are the easiest mark. They're the easiest targets.
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
the impoverished parents too.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. I took a taxi. This guy could barely speak English, and he had spent um, several years, 5 years, in forced labor in a foreign country. They lured him along with
Mhm.
many other adult workers.
Yeah.
And he had a career, like he was a professional in his country. And so they said, if you come over here, you can work, you'll make more money than you do in your country. He went to that country. They said, nope, pick this stuff, carry it on your back over there, and do that all day. And of course, he didn't want to do that. But now he's in a foreign country. They have his passport. He has no money, no nothing, no means to get out.
Yeah.
And so, which is the very definition of slave labor or bonded labor. And they separate you and isolate you from any kind of assistance that you could get. They take your passports, and in many cases, like bonded labor coming from South America and Central America to the United States, they're afraid that they're going to get turned in, right? But this guy had to work for 5 years and pay off that debt before they would send him home or allow him to go home, give him back his passport.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time he came back, his career field had moved on to the point where he was no longer viable, right? His education was out. So it literally ruined his career. And that's just an adult dealing with bonded labor. But children, they're in this country, what they do is they go in and they promise the parents a better life for their child.
Yeah.
And they have a great spiel, and the family's desperate and can barely feed them.
Yeah.
And so they send them off in the hopes that that's the truth. And of course, that's never the truth.
That's exactly the opening scene of Sound of Freedom. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. I want to ask you something you said at the beginning, though, that when you got the call to go to this country, they said that that their guys were untrained. How does that happen? How do they send people into a place like that without training, without the necessary training?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, I'm not very politically correct. I don't really. My only filter is controlling enough information to not get people in trouble or cause
Mhm.
problems. So, but other than that, here's how it works. Our guys go over there. They have some degree of training, and they elicit the aid of indigenous people because they can move more freely in and out of those brothels and workplaces.
Okay.
I cannot.
Right.
Right? I walk in and they go, "Whoop, that's enough of that." Right? Who's that guy?
Yeah.
So, um, so you can't use me. Like I'm a tourist. That's all I can be. Right? Maybe a businessman. Um, or I can be an offender, right? I could be one of the bad guys going with money,
Right.
But that's a very limited amount of ops you could run that way. So, and the reality is that you're really just trying to help those people find a venue of escape, right? A pathway. And so the local people are doing that, and those local people get almost no training. All the training they really get is how to do that aspect of it, right? What to say, how to get in there, what to say when you get in there, what to give them, and then how to get out. And that's really it. And then how to report that back to us so that we can go back. And they do that time and time again. And eventually you get enough touches. Hopefully you make some change, right? You get people out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
So
Um,
they got no training.
right. I'm thinking about you in that place, right? And seeing immigration, the immigration situation in another country. I became aware of that when I started watching Australian TV. And then I became aware of the number of people who try to get into Australia. And I thought,
Right.
America is not the only country in the world with this immigration problem.
No,
Right?
no, it's not.
Right?
It's not. Right.
Did you have any realizations like that?
I did. Because when we're talking about helping people, obviously we're talking about trying to how can we affect change long term, right? Not just help these 25 operatives that we were working with to do their job on a daily basis, but how can we take certain number of them and bring them to the United States and give them world class level training and send them back, right? But it just so happens that with that passport and without a work visa or anything, with that passport from that country, only 4 countries in the world accept that passport. U.S. is not one of them, by the way. So,
Yeah.
So I mean, it really limits their options, and those countries that they can get into generally are just for labor and exploitation, various forms of it. That's what happens. It's not. I'm sure it's not a governmental thing. That's just the nature of the beast. So, but they can't just walk. I guess what we're saying is they can't just walk out of that. They can't just go somewhere and get away. Like if I don't like Texas, which I can't imagine why that would be, but I could just walk up to Oklahoma. I could just drive over to live in Arkansas, or I could move to New York.
Right.
But those people don't have any of those options, right? So. Yeah. And they don't even have, I talked to a guy and he was working his entire life to buy a car. And he got a down payment on a car and became a taxi. Right. And so now he had a business. And so he was working 12 hours a day running this taxi with the sole purpose of sending his children to school, because without a job, he couldn't afford to send his kids to school. So his whole life's purpose is to send his kids to the local public school so that they could learn English. Because if they could learn English, they could meet people like me. And by meeting people like me, they could have access to first level information, first level knowledge, first level education, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So he realized his whole life is going to be to sacrifice just so his kids can have communication with first world level of information and people.
Yeah. I grew up in Barbados before I moved here. In Barbados, I was completely apolitical. I moved here. I was completely apolitical. I got to tell you something. You see that story you just told me there? It pisses me off when I see Americans, right? And I'm not a Native American. I'm an immigrant. It pisses me off when I hear them talking crap about this country. I'm like, what? Really? Right. Really? You know? So sometimes I wonder, you know, like when the celebrities talk about, oh, if so-and-so gets elected, I'm moving. And they never leave.
Right. Of course.
And they never leave. And you hear them complaining. And I'm just like, did you take a look at your bank balance recently? Right. What's the story? You know? So I don't want to get very political about you. But I do want to tell you this. I told, because somebody asked me, one of my students asked me yesterday, who am I talking to today, right? And I said, it's Harley Elmore, and somehow the conversation came about ranking systems in Jeet Kune. And if I remember correctly, the last time we talked, you said something like, anybody who has a user ranking system never made any money from it. It was something like that. Anybody who says that a ranking system doesn't work never made any money. Right. And you know, and I really, really appreciate that level of forthrightness, because, you know, I have to tread carefully, because, you know,
Sure.
do you know there are people who think that Dan Inosanto runs this show? Right? There are actually people who think that Dan Inosanto runs this show from behind the scenes or whatever. Yeah, right? Yeah, because, you know,
they obviously do not know Guru very well.
I mean, he's like a big organization guy, isn't he?
Oh yeah. And, you know, and a micromanager.
Yep. He is always making sure that nobody steps out of line and that everybody does things exactly the way he wants it done.
Oh man.
Right? You have no freedom to be an individual. You have no free, which is what pisses me off. Because you have these Jeet Kune purists who are like, oh, Bruce Lee was all about freedom of expression. Well, my God, who has given anybody in Jeet Kune more freedom?
Yeah, no one. And honestly, that's a double-edged sword, as you well know, right? Yeah. You know, because on one hand, you can do anything you want. On the other hand, if you don't really want to, you don't. So, you know, you don't have somebody who's really going to make you do anything. Guru Dan's not that kind of guy. Right. And so if you don't want to learn grappling, don't learn grappling. If you don't want to stick fight, don't stick fight. Yeah. I mean, he's as open and as loving and as caring and as nurturing as a human as I've ever met. Yeah. If only two people on earth ever make it to heaven, it's gonna be my grandmother and Dan Inosanto.
If somebody challenged you to distill, so you've been with him. You and I met, what, 89, when my first trip to Tulsa?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so that's 33 years ago.
We were graced by the legendary Dwight Woods. I was just a young buck. I was like, wow, this is the guy.
Yeah, right. So okay. So if somebody challenged you, your 3+ decades of association with Dan Inosanto, come up with a statement that explains what he's about. What's his guiding principle or his central theme or whatever? Could you do it?
Well, I use a common phrase when I talk about Dan Inosanto, because I have to kind of differentiate myself and my journey and Dan Inosanto, because people constantly are going, hey, that's not how Guru does that. I know. Right. Or right. You know, yeah. Or well, Guru never said that. I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah. So I have to explain why I am different, right? I mean, other than the fact that I'm a 6'2", 250-pound white guy, I have to explain why I'm teaching Guru's art differently than Guru, and why my path is different. because a lot of guys in JKD either completely are against Dan Inosanto or they want to emulate him, right?
Yeah.
So my one-liner, if you would, is Dan Inosanto teaches martial arts for humanity, right? He uses the martial arts as a way to better humanity. And he does that first by bettering the individual. He does it by sharing the universals of cultural study, the struggle of universal, I guess the universals of struggle through all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And in studying why they were doing those things, you understand them better. You get a better appreciation of them. And so, I am a poor white boy from Arkansas. I mean, people are like, "Oh, you must be prejudiced." I'm like, "Against what?" I'll tell you, I'm a prejudice against other poor white guys from Arkansas. There were no other ethnicities for me to be prejudiced of or to. Those were things I had to learn along the way.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand anything about those cultures, and so Dan Inosanto made me go look into Filipino history, look into Thai history, look into what is the difference between China and Taiwan, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between China and Hong Kong? Well, I don't know. Well, what does it make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Why is, and then that makes me go, well, what's the difference between Hong Kong Wing Chun and mainland Wing Chun? So
Isn't that amazing?
It is
amazing? Right? See, they just don't get it. They think it's you know what some of them appear to me to be saying? How dare he? He was graced by the physical presence of Bruce Lee. How dare he go beyond?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So first off, I'm going to be blasphemous here for a moment. I'm not a huge Bruce Lee fan. I realize that that's blasphemy,
Yeah.
but I never met Bruce, right? And so when I look at Bruce, I see a man trying to make his way, right? I see a guy working his guts out to try and be successful, to try and overcome prejudice, to try and overcome ignorance, to make a name for himself and to get recognition for his community and his art and his culture.
Yes.
And I get all that. And I also see a guy who's insecure, right? A guy who's having, marital problems, a guy who's having financial problems, and all the other things. He's a movie star in the 60s. Come on. we know what that life was like.
Yeah.
So that's, and I see a man who had some great insight and did a lot of great things. But I know and love Dan Inosanto, right?
Right.
He has invested in me personally, right? And has been there for questions and concerns and has mentored me and encouraged me and helped me and support me and it motivated me to inspire or to aspire to be more than just that poor redneck from Arkansas. And those are things that, are, no matter how that he chooses to do that or what art he chooses to do that, I don't really matter. I don't think it matters.
And the thing is, what you just said, right? It's almost like we could take the words that you just uttered, right, and talk to somebody else and ask them, does this describe your experience with Dan Inosanto as well? And they go, oh yeah, that says it perfectly, right?
Yep.
And it wouldn't be a white guy from Arkansas.
Right. No.
You know what I mean? It could be, it could be, look, when I, it's so hilarious. It really is. These people that comment, they have no idea what they don't know. And,
right.
And nobody, anyhow. So enough of that.
It's all opinions. It's all opinion pieces, right? So they probably never met Dan Inosanto or spent any real time with him. They probably haven't trained with anybody who spent any time with him. And you can say what you want about the organization of JKD and all that stuff. I think probably one of the strongest things we have going, And I know you've done a great deal of work. It's been like your life's mission to strengthen the brotherhood of JKD. And that's very admirable. And I respect you a lot for that. I think one of the things we have going for us is that it doesn't matter who we are. I know a ton of JKD guys I don't really care much for or don't like their approach or things like that. But every one of them loves Dan Inosanto.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I also love that guy. Right. I don't really have having to do with that guy, but I know for a fact that in his heart he loves Dan Inosanto, which means we're brothers.
Yep. I mean, I could tell people stories about particular individuals who, no matter what, you cannot tell me anything because I was there when I saw the love for Dan Inosanto pour out of him.
Right.
You see? So yeah, so I know exactly what and that's the thing. They don't understand the humanity aspect of, let's call it our JKD family, right? They don't understand the humanity aspect of it at all. So let's switch gears because I didn't want to. This wasn't supposed to be. What one guy said that I hate it when my hero isn't worshipped, right? So Rich Means he didn't see the episode when I said that the I love Jeet Kune broadcast when I said never meet your heroes, right? so
right.
We talked about statements. So the picture that I use for the postcard is the one of you saying nobody wants to be an old man with no scars. All right. What does that mean?
Well, I think that in today's world, people's entire life is wrapped around how to make my life more comfortable and easier. Everything they do in their life is geared towards accomplishing one of those two. Mm-hmm. And I do not think that that is the goal of humanity. Like if that were the purpose, if that were like what we're supposed to strive for, no one would have ever climbed the mountains. No one would have ever chopped their way through jungles or sailed the seas or done any of the miraculous things that we've done as humanity. So I think that we are supposed to go out in life and find challenges and find difficulties and then go face them head on. In SIOC, it's kind of the purview of a SIOC 2-1 to do the impossible, right? That's one of our sayings. We do the impossible every day. Mm-hmm. And not just for the council, but for as an organization. And so when we got into exploring this idea of fighting human exploitation, I was like, that's impossible. That's an impossible mission, right? And so I'm going to focus that. I'm going to spend all my time and energy. This is who I am now, right? This is now my fight. And to do that, well, that's not an easy task. That's a battle, right? It's a war, actually, And I mean, there are more slaves today, right now. There are more people in slavery than ever in the history of mankind. There are more slaves now than when they built the pyramids. There are more slaves now than when the slave trade to North America and South America was going on. Mm-hmm. So that's a heck of a fight, right? And so that's not easy, right? That's a lot of work, and we're all going to take scars along the way. Emotional scars, physical scars, all that financial scars. And so when people ask, what can I do? I'm like, join the fight. Join the fight. Don't just go watch the movie. I mean, that's great. Yeah. Then post on Facebook, hey, everybody should go see this. Great. Welcome to the fight. Right. Yeah. So now do something. And because again, I want to be comfortable. I want this to be easy. Right. But that's not what we're supposed to be. We're warriors, right? We train to be warriors. It's who we are. It's in our DNA. We spend our times doing that. I can't think of a better way to pay back Dan Inosanto and Chris Syak and Tony Samara and Leo Harone and Terry Gibson, all my amazing mentors. I cannot think of a better way to honor them than to use what I've learned from them in this particular mission to end human exploitation. And so
well said.
That's not going to happen while I sit on my couch and rest and live comfortably.
Let me ask
You're going to get scars.
Right? Let me ask you this. Do you think that a finger jab to the eyes and a shin kick, right, suffices in that war?
No, I mean, I don't know about you, but I have found in my, I worked for several years as a bouncer and racked up a couple, 200 or 300 fights. I have found that when you finger jab a guy, he doesn't become more calm. He does not become less animated when you finger jab a guy or you kick a guy in the shin. People get pissed off, and that really is the start of the fight. I mean, I guess it could happen if it's completely, if I just walked up and went, hey man, bang, and hit him with a finger jab. But when people are ready to go, I mean, and so in this conflict, I get a lot of martial artists saying, hey man, if you need somebody to be on your team, like I'll go beat up some pedophiles. I'm like, I appreciate that. But this is a little different venue, right? And so it requires different tools, different training, different levels of education, right? So I'm like, if you really want to help out, OperationRescueChildren.org, go donate some money.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, this hero worship of Bruce Lee. He created the perfect system. Nobody needs to study anything else. All your answers, wherever your martial art career might take you, all your answers are there. No need to look at anything else. Woo. And he did it all. He did it all by age 32.
Right. Right. I mean, granted, he did some amazing stuff by the time he was 32. No doubt.
Yes.
But he didn't have all the answers any more than I did or you.
Right.
No, I don't believe that's the case. I mean, even just look at him. He was drawing from as many different sources as he possibly could. I mean, he wasn't just reading one book. He had a massive library, and he was taking notes from boxing books and fencing books. And I mean, it's easy. You look at the curriculum. It's full of fencing terms and fencing theory and boxing techniques and, Japanese jujitsu. And I mean, he was searching too. So for people to say, oh, you shouldn't do it, because in his 9 years from 1964 to 1973, he created everything you're ever going to need. It answers everything. It's just ridiculous, right? Yeah. I tell you what he did come up with, and that is an unapologetic idea to research all cultures and all things, and to count on your own experiences, right? And test everything, and find out for yourself what works. I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get, and even that he borrowed from someone else.
That's the thing. He was smart enough to know, right, where to go looking for stuff, and then incorporate it into his own being. I don't understand why that, for some people, that's not the lesson. That's not the life lesson that they take away from it.
Right. I mean, there's a time for a finger jab, a BOG, and a jig tech, right? There's also a time for, a very quick blade draw, to the subclavian, or, good sight picture and, good trigger control, right? Or good diplomatic communication. There's a time for all that. I wish that I could say that any one art has that, but they don't, just as he was studying multicultural arts, I think we have to be studying multicultural arts. I mean, here's the thing. I think a lot of people talk about Dan Inosanto, and they say, well, my favorite thing is, oh, I hope I can move like that when I'm 87. I'm like, you can't move like that now, 27. Right? Yeah. What are you talking about, kid?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, Bruce Lee, Dan Inosanto added this and that, and he dabbled in this, Dan Inosanto didn't dabble in anything, right? He literally is one of the world's leading authorities on any of the arts that he's talking about, on any of them. And that's why he works and can cross-pollinate so well from system, organization, because everybody recognizes mastery, right?
Yeah.
And so you go to Thai boxing and people listen to Dan Inosanto. You go to jiu-jitsu, people listen. You go to Silat camps and people listen. You go to Kali, any kind of Kali camp, even though they're all fighting each other, they all listen to Dan Inosanto.
Right.
And so I think that the truth, if we look at what Dan Inosanto has done, is he's saying, look, don't just dabble, like spend your life understanding this problem, right? And look at it. Don't just glance at surface value. Don't be on the outside looking in, trying to understand it. Be on the inside looking out, trying to figure out how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great example.
You did that in that. I see that as your approach to running a school. You didn't dabble. You dove deep into it, and
Right.
the results speak for themselves. And I wanted to ask you about that because I can't remember. Where did you go? So I am assuming that Terry Gibson, because I remember he was one of the first of our clan to want to go professional, right? And I use the adjective professional versus the adjective commercial because commercial has a negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
So Terry was one of the first of us to professionalize what he was doing. I am assuming that the seed that he planted that seed in you, but I wondered, did you go anywhere specific for martial art business knowledge cultivation?
SIOC.
Really? Now that's very interesting. That's very interesting because here's what I noticed. You and Dan Anderson in Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
Are very successful professional martial artists, and you both come from Terry Gibson. But you and Nick Sekoulas are also very professional, very successful professional martial artists, and you have SIOC in common. So I'm confused. What am I missing here? Right? Fill in that blank for me.
Well, I think that you're right. That Mr. Gibson, Terry had been an attorney. And after his, I believe it was his second brain tumor, he realized, they had told him, hey, you're having seizures on a regular basis. Any one of these seizures can turn you into a vegetable or could kill you. And so realizing, that death was could come at any week. He realized I hate being attorney. and he did oil and gas in Tulsa. So, he was like stuck in an office, very nice office with that very nice furniture, but stuck in an office going over contracts every day. And he hated that. Terry, as you know, Terry was a people person and loved martial arts. So he decided, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do martial arts for a living. And so he took the professionalism of being an attorney and took that into the martial arts world. And said, I'm going to run this as a business, and we're going to take a look at how that works. And Terry realized very early that it's to be a professional, you have to invest in people. That is really the business, is investing in people. Right. But this is how you run classes, right? This is how you take dues. This is how you do formal testing. This is the standards. This is how you write a curriculum. I learned all that from Terry. And it was monumentally instrumental for me. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was probably 22, something around in there. And so, I mean, just a kid. I think I was 21, and I just turned 21. And so, to see that, and then after he passed away, I came to this town, and I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna recreate Gibson's martial arts here in Wichita Falls, in this small town. Tulsa is 500,000 people. It's a little large for me. Wichita Falls is 150,000. It's more my style. And so I came here with that idea, and I like I said, I did some other things because I was broke at the time. After taking care of Mr. Gibson, I was broke. And so I just came here, and I got 3 jobs and worked 60 hours, 3 part-time jobs that gave me 20 hours a piece, and met my who is now my wife, Crystal, and we started working on that, and so we built our business basically from that launch point, like
Right.
using the same formula Kathy gave me. Like, this envelope is where we put the rent money. like it's very basic, and now, of course, my wife and I have built our organization and our business, and it's been going 25 years now.
Nice.
And it's a much different animal, but yeah, a lot of the things I was learning in SIOC were really about not just about the martial arts. There were these underlying principles or formulas that Pamana Tuan Chris SIOC was teaching, and I developed a really good relationship very early, and so I started calling him every week, and I would talk about life and my wife and my business, and he would give me advice, and the advice that in the way that Chris SIOC gave it, which was never direct. And some of it was like so crazy, you're like, that can't be right, but what it really made you do is analyze the problem,
Yeah.
and come up with different avenues. And then, of course, I had a great network of other successful people in the system that helped and guide me and directed me, and helped me achieve the success that we want. And of course, anybody who knows me knows that enormous amount of my success is due to my wife, Crystal, and her relentless pursuit of perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a JKD colleague senior who told me once about spending time with one of the older Filipino guys and learning about how to be a man. Right? What is this Filipino wisdom? What is it?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure it's Filipino. It might be old man wisdom, right? Maybe it was just the fact that he was an old man.
Yeah.
I do think that there's something about that generation, and if he's one of your seniors, he's been around a while, so that man would have been quite senior to most people that he was talking to. So I think there's something about that last generation that really had some wisdom. They were not politically correct. They were firmly grounded in reality and in consequences. And I think, and in common sense, hard work, those things that really matter and really make it. I think that's really the key to it. And as I become the old gray beard, I find myself being in that role. It's just the way it works. There's that hierarchy. We're squires, and then knights, and then kings, and then sages, and now we're kings. You're the king of your kingdom, and I'm the king of my kingdom, and we overlook other young knights and kings to be, and it's our experience and our wisdom and scars that have given us the ability to be able to counsel them effectively.
Yeah.
And it's Dan Inosanto as the sage who keeps whispering the truth in our ear and guiding us and directing us with love and encouragement.
Man, Harley, the way you described that sounds like a book. That sounds like something somebody should be writing.
It's how I teach the structure of our organization, and who we should be, because if you don't know where you're at, then you feel like you have responsibilities that aren't yours, and you do things that is not your job. So as a squire, you have a very specific role. Listen to that knight, wear his colors, learn the craft, watch and learn from his example, and grow stronger in that pathway, so that when it's your turn, you become the knight. And then now that you're the knight, you have an obligation to a king, right? Now you fly his colors and you follow his direction, and your job is to carry out the will of the king. But for the first time in your life, you have skin in the game, because now you can die on the battlefield, right? Yeah. You have risk now that a squire didn't have. And so now we go out and we gain the experiences, and we get the battle scars, and we learn from the challenges of life and battle. And we watch our brothers fall, and we watch our brothers succeed. We learn from all of that. from our own failures and successes.
Yeah.
And when things are hard and everybody's thinking about, man, there's no way, and they all turn to you and they go, Dwight, what are we going to do? Right. Well, then when it comes time for there to be the next king, everybody goes, Dwight. Every time we've had a problem, we've all gone Dwight, and Dwight's gone, all right, guys, here's what I think. And so it becomes obvious when it comes time for there to be a new king. Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. And then you become the king, and then you serve the people.
It's what for me is fascinating. Everything that you just said there, right, is a Jeet Kune lesson as well. Everything that you just said there is a Jeet Kune lesson, because Bruce Lee is a guy who was not at all in the theory of it. Bruce Lee is a guy that was in the doing. The answers came in the doing, and, right? So, but I got to ask you this, though. I don't think at age 21, 22, you were talking that way. So how did you know to name your place Warrior's way back then?
Oh, that's a great question. So I had, as a younger man, tried to have a school, and it was something about, it was a warrior base then, but I want to say it was mirror image warriors. And because at the time when I was 17 or 18, I thought, well, the goal would be to be the mirror image of my instructor, and be one of his warriors. And then as I grew older, I realized, oh no, that's not the goal at all. But I believe that, and then when I started earlier, and I eventually got kicked out of that organization. We can talk about that some other time. But then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to name my group Island Warrior Fighting Arts. And so that had a very brief stint. That was just right before Mr. Gibson hired me. Okay. And so then later on, after Mr. Gibson's passing, I thought, well, maybe I'll pick that up. And then I realized, island, the idea of islands is very limited, right? So Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indochina, all that stuff. Those aren't islands. So I just tried to shorten it down to the warrior's way. Right. And, the path that we're all following. And that's a universal thing, right? It's not a Filipino thing. It's not a Thai thing. It's not a Japanese thing, and I can look at Japanese warriors and Chinese warriors and Thai warriors and Indonesian warriors, and I can understand that path. I can understand the journey, the trials, the tribulations, the struggle. Yeah. I can understand why they were doing what they were doing. I can understand the process of training and hardening, of trying to train up the next generation. And then I can look at that and say, oh, that's exactly the same thing as the Navy SEALs and, the U.S. Army Special Forces and those guys, right? It's the same thing. It's the same culture, with the same process and same path.
Right. And what age were you when you stopped giving a crap what people thought?
I don't know that I have quite achieved that. Okay. There are still, I still care what people think. Certain people. That's right. Okay. When some guy gets on, one of my favorite things is people get on there on social media and watch one of my videos and go, that would never work. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? That worked for like 1,000 years before I ever saw it, in Chinese and Japanese and Indonesian, they all did that. What are you talking about? It doesn't work. Maybe I didn't do it right. I'll own that, right? Maybe I didn't do it well. Maybe I didn't perform it as well as I should have. But to say it doesn't work, So for the most part, I tell people, hey, training isn't the answers. I'm sorry, the answers that you seek are in training. That's my favorite tagline. The answers you seek are in training. When they're, talking shit about me and my videos or my friends or my instructors, I'm like, you know what? If you just trained enough, you'd realize the value of that. And if you don't, it just goes to show that you just have such a very limited understanding of what we're talking about. So you're really talking to people who have a very low level of education, and their idea of violence boils down to one particular thing, whether it's an MMA match or a jiu-jitsu tournament or a boxing tournament or a kickboxing tournament. and that's their lens that they're looking at all the world through. And they look at me doing stick and dagger, sword and dagger, and go, that would never work. I'm like, sword and dagger killed a lot more people than a triangle choke. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not as many people as a gun. So, I mean, you just got to understand, and when you understand that, I think it's a little easier to tolerate, those people who are talking trash.
Mhm.
That's where they're at. That's where they're at in their journey. And I just have to remember, there was a time when I was like that too, right? When I was 22, I remember when I was young, Dan Inosanto told me, Harley, the key to Filipino martial arts is footwork. And I thought to myself, no, that's not right. No, it's about swinging hard and fast and
Right.
having these smooth combinations, but I remember being arrogant enough to think that about what he was saying. No,
Right.
that's not right.
I remember he told me at the end of week 2, he says, okay, Dwight, you got about a year's worth of material. I was like, nah, right? So then next summer, I'm like, damn, you were right. Because there's stuff in my notes I haven't touched,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we started this with movie talk. So I have a list of movies, so I got to ask you which ones you've seen. Have you seen
Okay.
Barbie?
Seen what?
Barbie.
No. No.
Top Gun Maverick.
Yes.
Okay. Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, I think, is the new one.
Yes. So I'm loyal. I'm loyal to a franchise. So like I love Indiana.
Really?
I love Indiana Jones, and it doesn't matter if they screw it up with a little bit of this or that. I'm loyal to the idea, and so I would support that. If this movie sucks, maybe the next guy. If the franchise keeps going, maybe the next guy will do something great with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so so I'm loyal to Indy. And all that.
Mission Impossible, the new one.
Not really something I've never really got into them.
Oh, okay.
So no, I haven't seen it.
Oppenheimer.
Not yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, do you think you can tell something about somebody from their movie choices?
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're worth your salt, you can. I think you ought to be able to look and walk by, glance in someone's car, and tell just about everything you want to know. If they let you into their personal space, and we teach this in SIOC. If you look at somebody's book library, their bookshelves behind them, you should be able to figure them out pretty quick, right? And so yeah, I think their reading list, their music choice, their favorite movies. I mean, there's actually a formula for doing all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. What how should I put this? Because okay, forget that for a second. The franchise thing, right? Is that something that you are doing yourself?
Franchise.
Yeah. That's
you mean
because I was thinking about it because it's Warriors Way, Texas.
Oh, right.
Right.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Has there been an expansion beyond just your?
Sure. Yeah. So Warriors Way International is the organization.
Okay.
We're Warriors Way, Texas.
Okay.
And of course, over the last 25 years, we promoted instructors. Those instructors then go out and hopefully open their own schools. And so I believe Chuck Giangreco, Chuck and Kara from New York. They're a Warriors Way school. Of course, Brandon Bennett in Tulsa, Oklahoma, kind of took over the Terry Gibson local group. And they're a Warriors Way school. So yeah, they all kind of branch out and do their own thing, but it's not a franchise. We come together and as a group, we have a cadre of instructors. And so when there's a new instructor, or a group of new instructors that needs to get promoted, we all bring them together. We test them here at Warriors Way International headquarters.
Right.
And they test, and then they go back to wherever it is they're from. And so We all share a curriculum. Um, we all do camps together and all that stuff. So yeah, Warriors Way International is ours. But I don't. It's not, like I said, it's not a franchise. I don't take any money from them or anything like that. I believe that a man ought to be able to keep what he earns.
All right. So I want to finish up with this. Out there in the world, and here in our little world of Jeet Kune, what's to blame? Ignorance or stupidity?
I would say ignorance. I mean, stupidity implies it's not your fault. You have a low IQ. Sorry. That's you can't. That's like, we can't help you with that. But ignorance. I mean, that's all our faults, right? So, and I think that's the thing that's solvable. I can become more educated. I can get a different perspective. There was a time when I thought the world was this big, and that this was all I needed, and all those things, right? And I think as we grow up and we become mature, responsible adults, and we take on the responsibility of helping our friends and family and being a leader to them, we realize the world is bigger and is more than just us and what we want, or even what our family wants. And so it forces us to look at things from different perspectives.
Right.
And so now we can be friends and understand each other from different cultures, different races, different martial arts, and we can find a common ground and move forward towards the betterment of humanity.
Right.
But when people are trying to tear it apart, there's generally only a few reasons for that, and I think ignorance and ego are the primary ones.
What about, is it laziness or lack of awareness?
Oh, yeah, that's a good. I mean, I believe that the hardest thing on the planet is being self-aware. I think that is by far the most challenging aspect to the whole thing.
Mhm.
Because it's a constant, like trying to maintain your self-awareness constantly is a real problem for most people. And it's why you need a tribe. Because sometimes you can't see the problem yourself. You need somebody who's got a vested interest in you and is close enough to you that they feel comfortable. Well, first off, they can see it. Second, they feel comfortable enough saying something to you about it. And third, you respect them enough to listen. So you have to have tribe. That can't just be coworkers, right? And so if you have a process of being self-aware, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, my friend, like I said in the beginning, we don't do this often enough, but I would bring you on every week, then people would be like, what's wrong with him? Right. But it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, man. Always a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you letting me get on here and talk about our organization and what we're doing. And if people want to help out, they can reach out to me and we'll put them to work.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the final edit and what have you. The thing is, I actually got on the Sound of Freedom post, I got a message from a guy that I know from the marketing world. I had no idea. I knew that he was in movies, but he's an uncredited co-producer of Sound of Freedom.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, all right, so these guys that are talking about, oh, it's a work of fiction and it's based on this, or they have no idea.
Right. They have no idea.
None.
And it's a movie. And so if it brings to light this problem that everybody's discussing now, because now all of a sudden our phones are blowing up, right? About, what can I do? How can I help? Which is fantastic. Like I said, welcome to the fight. Where you been? So I think that the movie is doing a great job of doing that. It is putting the word out there. People are now becoming aware of that problem, and they're asking the question, what can I do about it? Which is fantastic. We are working with, state and national level operators to do that work here in the United States as well. And we do that on a regular basis. And it has been one of the high points of my professional career, is being able to have the opportunity to work with those guys in this particular field.
Excellent. Tell everybody the website again.
OperationRescueChildren.org.
All right. Nice one. Harley Elmore,
Thanks, brother.
it's been a pleasure, man.
Thanks, Dwight. I appreciate you very much.
All right.
Keep up the great work.
All right. Thanks, man. You take care.
All right, sir.
All right. All right, folks. Episode 271 of the Jeet Kune Dialogues. What a wonderful guy, huh? Right? Neil McLeod, thank you very much for suggesting that I reach out to Harley, and many thanks to him for taking me up on it. We set all that up in like just a couple of days or so. So that's it for this program. Feel free, share, like, comment. Ask questions if you want. I'll ask Harley to take a look and see if there's anything he needs to answer. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. At paypal.me/unified MA Miami, you can find the Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1, paypal.me/unified MA Miami. Here on the Jeet Kune Dialogues YouTube channel, click the join button and you can see the different levels of sponsorship that are available to you. And of course, the other way you can support the program is visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The Jeet Kune Notables coffee mug, also available in garment form. But as I said earlier, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune Dialogues. All right, so as you've seen, today instead of the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast, we had the Jeet Kune Dialogues. There is a possibility that I will do an episode of the broadcast on Friday, but I will try to let you guys know as soon as I can, right? There's some complications that are coming up, so that's one reason why today it was shifted. All right, so in any case, until the next episode, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. You guys have a great evening, and we'll talk soon. Take care.